can you smell it? Because these guys can.
I'd say the risk of a recession is really high in Australia now.
And despite the government hosing down concerns,
the expectation is that the Australian economy will slow but continue to grow.
Evidence is emerging that on one front at least, the recession has already arrived.
We've seen retail spending go backwards over the past 6 months, so we can say that we're in a retail recession.
With fears the retail retreat could spark a wider consumer recession later this year.
As rates keep going up, that means more of a squeeze. It could broaden into a broader consumer recession where we also cut back more significantly on services, on travel, on entertainment.
In the first few months of 2023, the economy grew just 0.2%.
We're certainly close to stall speed with these GDP figures.
Some economists predicting just one more rate rise could be enough to tip Australia into full-blown recession. And more hikes are more than likely.
It is too early to declare victory in the battle against inflation.
Which means it's time for...
The Barefoot Governor.
From the guy who brought you...
You decide to get a flatmate or a housemate.
This week, Phil's back with some more helpful advice. Spend less, work more.
If people can cut back spending or in some cases find additional hours of work, that would put them back into a positive cash flow position.
The Barefoot Governor.
Is Philip Lowe doing what he's asking everybody else to do?
How to even comment on that?
I think everybody is working very hard at the moment.
Households have already cut back spending on non-essential items to 2021 lockdown levels. And they're drawing on savings, which it's predicted will be drained by September.
I think everyone's tightening up.
I'm just careful all the time.
It's definitely scary. It seems like it's just going to get worse and worse.
So is there anything we can do to stem the rapidly raising recession tide?
Finance guru Evan Lucas joins us now. Evan, is this recession inevitable?
A technical recession looks inevitable, Waleed, unfortunately, to say that. The reason I sort of described that, if you look at what we call a per capita GDP recession, which is where we see everything on a like-for-like basis. So net migration has kept us out of probably having a headline recession, and that's because we're getting a reasonable amount of migration in here, which is keeping consumption up. But when you look without that put in and go year on year what we've done, we have gone back 0.2 in the first quarter. We're on track to do that again in the second quarter. So that's a technical recession. Do also want to point out, I'm not forecasting that from just an economist's point of view. The RBA and the Fed are telling the same thing. So the federal government actually in their budget had a per capita GDP recession baked into it. So we are facing down that. And it may not actually be at the headline. You and I are feeling the pressure that is happening on our living standards. And that is, even if it doesn't actually have a headline recession issue, we know that we're feeling it. We know that our living standards are being impinged by what's going on right now.
Well, Philip Lowe has some pretty interesting advice for us. He says we need to spend less and work more. I mean, a lot of Aussies are struggling at the moment and they feel pretty angered by this. How can we spend less and work more? You go to the supermarket and prices are already through the roof.
So when we talk about spending, it's not just at the supermarket. Spending is everything. So that, unfortunately, what he's also saying there, and this gets back down to living standards, particularly if you're under 45, you've never gone through this period. You've never experienced high inflation or a level of period where your choice to do what you want to do has actually now been altered. Your ability to go, I want to go and buy a discretionary item, go out, travel, an apparel item, etc., that is almost now off the table. You're being forced to make choices on what you're referring to there, Sarah, which is essentials. And what we refer to as essentials is food, shelter, energy, transportation, and health. They're the ones that matter to what we do. That is something he knows you can't change. But you can change, unfortunately, your behaviour and your ability to go out and have a good time. And that is why it's also so hard to sit here and tell you this, because that, once you start taking that pressure out and you do start slowing down those things, that will bring inflation down. And it's a horrible thing. It is terrible. And the medicine to get it down is bitter, to say the least. But that is what, unfortunately, happened in the 90s, the 70s, and also in the 80s when we had inflation problems like we have now.
Evan, how could this recession look like? Like, how's it going to impact us? For example, if you're a comedian on a nightly, current affairs show, would you still have a job?
You will have a job. It's more a question of how many shows, right? So you may go from having 2 shows...
6 nights a week, 6 to 8 p.m.
Yeah. So that's the change, right? So the venue that you go and do your shows at may have to turn around and go, well, we're not actually filling the venue as much. We need to cut your shows down. That's how you'll feel it. And that's the catch here is that, again, the change will therefore impact your ability to then go from your show and therefore the income you generate to then going out and spending in your overall life. And that's your living standard change. That's the hard thing about this is your living standards, through no fault of your own, are being changed by the economic environment we're in.
So just to be clear, we're talking about Sam's stand-up shows there.
Not through no fault of my own.
Sure, but the project is we're happy with that. Yes. As long as Sam wears it, we're...
Okay, I'll be the face of this.
Evan, thank you very much for clarifying.
Thanks, guys.